Hey guys and gals, welcome back to the Federalist Papers series. I hope you're enjoying it. And today we're going to talk about what happens when a government can't enforce the laws that they pass. In Federalist 16, Alexander Hamilton warns that a weak national government doesn't produce more freedom. It produces chaos, coercion, and eventually force. And yes, that connects directly to why the Second Amendment matters as a check against power, and why the founders feared standing armies and political emergencies. Hey folks, welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to continue this Federalist series and dig into Federalist number 16, one of the most important essays for understanding how the founders viewed power, enforcement, tyranny, and why the entire constitutional structure was designed to prevent the government from ever needing to rule by raw force. If you've ever heard somebody say the federal government shouldn't have any power because power is dangerous, well, Hamilton's response in Federalist 16 is basically a government with no effective power doesn't stay harmless. It becomes unstable, and unstable governments end up reaching into the worst toolbox where they use fear, emergency powers, and force. So let's break this down in a way that actually makes sense, which is why I'm doing this series and hope that you are benefiting from it. And then I'll tie it directly into the Second Amendment, because this essay is absolutely about risk of coercion and the realities of who holds force in a society. Federalist 16 is part of Hamilton's early run of essays defending the proposed Constitution against anti-federalist criticisms. And for those wondering, yes, the Anti-Federalist Papers will follow this series. At the time, the United States was operating under the Articles of Confederation, and the big problem wasn't that Congress had zero authority on paper. It was that Congress didn't have the practical ability to carry out national policy. Under the Articles, Congress could request money from states. They could request troops. They could request compliance. But if a state said no, Congress basically had two choices: do nothing and look weak, inviting more defiance, or use force. Meaning, what exactly? March an army into a state? Well, Hamilton's core argument is this: a system that forces the national government to negotiate with states for every necessary function is a system that inevitably collapses into one of two outcomes: a national impotence and eventually fragmentation, or national coercion, force to compel compliance. Now, he's addressing a very specific anti-federalist idea, that it's better for the federal government to operate only through the states, like a league, rather than acting directly upon the people. Well, Hamilton says that sounds nice until it doesn't work, and it won't work. And this is the backbone for Federalist 16. Hamilton argues that if the national government can only act through the states, then national laws become recommendations. And once laws become recommendations, you don't have a functioning government, you have a political argument with no referee. So Hamilton insists that a legitimate government must be able to pass laws and enforce laws directly on individuals. Why? Because if you make states the enforcement middlemen, then each state becomes a veto point. And that creates a cycle. Congress will pass a rule. A state politician would decide if they like it. If they don't like it, they interpret it differently or ignore it. And other states follow along. And federal authority then dissolves. The union starts breaking into rival blocs. And Hamilton isn't praising big government for fun. He's making a structural argument. If your system requires constant state compliance to function, it will fail under real pressure. And when it fails, it doesn't fail peacefully. Hamilton paints a picture that is almost predictive. When the federal government can't execute policy, factions will form, regional interests will harden, trade disputes will escalate, and alliances will shift. And then eventually you'll get economic warfare between states, political brinksmanship, and then solutions involving force. And this is the part that many people miss. Hamilton says that a weak center doesn't prevent violence. It increases the chance of violence. Because now the law becomes whatever local power decides. And once people don't believe the rules will be fairly or consistently applied, they start hedging politically, economically, and physically. And that's how unions dissolve. And I'm going to ask you if you see any of that right now in the Second Amendment community. Do you see we're in a spot where rules are being consistently applied? Now, Hamilton's critics argued, if the federal government can't enforce laws through the states, it will have to coerce states. And Hamilton basically responds, exactly, and that's why the articles are a trap. He calls the idea of coercing states by force a disaster. Because what does that actually mean? Well, it means the federal government raises an army. It uses it against the state government, which triggers resistance, which escalates into civil conflict. And Hamilton's point is chillingly practical. If the national government's only enforcement tool is force against states, then every serious dispute becomes a crisis that looks like war. So what's the solution? Not no federal power. The solution is a structure where federal laws apply to individuals, like every other normal government. So enforcement is legal, targeted, and consistent, rather than military and political. Now, here's where the tie-in starts getting real. Hamilton argues that chronic dysfunction will eventually justify extraordinary measures. In plain English, that means if government can't execute basic functions, defense, trade, stability, revenue, uniform policy, well then leaders will claim they must expand powers to survive. And what expands fastest in a crisis? Executive power, surveillance and policing, and most importantly, standing military force. Because when institutions can't achieve compliance through ordinary means, they reach for the strongest tool available. Hamilton's critics feared federal tyranny. Hamilton says a weak system actually creates conditions where tyranny becomes more likely, because crisis becomes permanent. Sound familiar? Let's connect the dots carefully and responsibly here. Federalist 16 is not about the Second Amendment in a direct, modern talking point way. Those papers are still coming, so stay tuned. But it is absolutely about force, who holds it, and what happens when law collapses into coercion. And here's the key correlation here. The founders feared government by force. Hamilton is warning that failed governance leads to the use of force as a policy. And the Second Amendment, in the founders' worldview, sits inside a broader architecture meant to prevent government from needing or claiming it needs force against the people. A stable constitutional order reduces the pretext of crackdowns. A constant emergency creates the pretext for crackdowns. If the only option is coercion, the people lose. Now, Hamilton hates the idea of federal coercion against states because it looks like war. But the bigger principle is, when politics become coercion, someone is getting coerced. And historically, it's not the powerful who get coerced first. It's regular folks like you or I. Now, the founders' system tries to prevent that by splitting power, limiting power, and yes, recognizing that an armed citizenry and militia tradition were part of the broader balance of power in the society. Also, emergency narratives are where rights go to die. Hamilton's message aligns with the Second Amendment warning that gun owners understand instinctively. When officials say, we have to do this for safety, what that often means is, we need more power because the system is unstable, or because we've chosen instability as the governing strategy. A government that can't govern normally will always tell you it needs exceptional measures. And in modern life, those measures frequently aim at restricting arms, restricting assembly, restricting speech, and centralizing enforcement authority. We saw every one of those happen during COVID. So Federalist 16 gives you the philosophical groundwork. Instability becomes the justification for coercion. The Second Amendment, guys and gals, is not about chaos. It's about preventing coercion. And this is important because Hamilton is not calling for disorder. He's not romanticizing rebellion. He's saying good government is government that can operate through law, predictably and consistently, without turning every dispute into a crisis. But the Second Amendment doesn't exist to create instability. It exists as part of a framework that recognizes a hard truth of history. When governments panic or exploit panic, rights get paused and then rewritten. And here's the modern application. Without turning this into a partisan rant, Hamilton is warning you about a governing style where officials can't produce legitimacy, so they produce compliance. And compliance can come from persuasion, trust, and fair law, or from fear, bureaucracy, and force. The force isn't always tanks in the streets. In modern times, it can look like selective enforcement, administrative harassment, punitive regulation, permission slip culture, and policies designed to make exercising rights so expensive and risky that people self-censor. Have you heard of any of that lately? When the system is stressed, the instinct of power is to tighten control. And Federalist 16 helps us understand why the founders designed the system that disperses power. So tightening control is harder. And that is where an armed citizenry, a militia tradition, and the broader concept of an independent people fits in, as part of an anti-coercion ecosystem, if you will. So if you're taking nothing else from Federalist 16, I ask you to take this. Number 1, a government that can't enforce laws peaceably and peacefully through normal legal channels will eventually try to enforce order through coercion. Number 2, a system built on state compliance alone creates constant veto points and consistent crisis. Number 3, crisis becomes the excuse for expanded power, including standing force. And 4, the Second Amendment sits within a broader design meant to prevent the government from ever becoming the only meaningful holder of force in our society. And that's why learning these essays matters, because the founders were not naive. They were students of human nature, power, and history. And they knew what could happen if we, the people, would give away our ability to check them. Thank you to Blackout Coffee for sponsoring the work that goes into this series. Let's be honest, it's the best coffee out there. I know I'm partial as one of the owners, but supporting Blackout Coffee means more than what you think. We are pro-American. We don't apologize for supporting freedom. We don't apologize for supporting the Constitution or the Second Amendment. We donate money right back to groups like Gun Owners of America, Second Amendment Foundation, and the Firearms Policy Coalition to sue the government for violating our Second Amendment. You can help by supporting us. Our coffee is outstanding. It's bold and smooth. It's roasted right here in America, in Florida. You can learn more at blackoutcoffee.com/GNG, and you can use code GNG10 to save 10% on everything we have. We have coffee, teas, and hot chocolates, great swag, cups, mugs, you name it. Check us out. Stop funding companies that hate you. Drink Blackout Coffee. Guys, if you want freedom to survive, you have to understand the architecture that protects it. That's why I'm doing this series on the Federalist Papers. Because once you understand what the founders feared, you start recognizing patterns when they show up again. Drop a comment. Do you think modern America is drifting towards permanent emergency politics? Yes or no? And if you found this useful, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and please share this with several people who think the Constitution is just old paper. It isn't. It's a warning. It's a blueprint. And it should be protected at all costs. God bless you. God bless America. I am so happy that you're joining me for this series. Stay armed and stay free, my brothers and sisters, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.